The September 8th, 2015 meeting of the North Kingstown School Committee is now called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Healy, can you please call the roll?
D'Avanzato?
Here.
De Blasbach?
Here.
Mrs. Clarkin?
Here. Jones?
Mrs. McGoffin?
Here.
Mrs. Held?
Here.
Thank you.
Mrs. Healy, can you please recite the calendar?
Monday, September 14th, 2015, there will be a school committee planning session at 6 p.m. in the central administrative offices. And Tuesday, September 22nd, there's a school committee business meeting at 7 p.m. at the North Kingstown High School.
Thank you. We have two individuals who have signed up for citizens' comments. The first is Chris Madoyan.
Yes, Chris Madoyan, 70 Spring Road. I just came tonight to speak. I saw on the agenda the topic of the designation of the fund balance. I think over the years coming to the meetings here and you folks talk about the fund balance. I was very excited to see this topic and how you looking to allocate or at least designate those funds for certain categories. Just by ignoring these expenses doesn't make them go away over the years. And I know you need that type of money for the capital improvements. And as the president of the Booster Club, again, I was excited to see some of the line items that were at least mentioned. One for the capital needs for the athletic department. Again, looking at that athletic budget over the many years that I've been involved, there are expenses such as equipment and uniforms that don't seem to be accounted. Again, those expenses are always there, yet the money is not in the budget to cover those expenses on a day-in, day-out basis. And then again, on the topic of the athletic complex, something that I've been involved with some discussions with everybody. And I think one thing we talked about was everyone having a little skin in the game. And if we could get the school department to come forth with that, again, we talked to the town and have them come forth with some. We understand that there's probably going to be a large component that is a private sector that we as the Booster Club would love to be involved with and assist with that. But I think this is a great step forward and shows the folks that everybody is thinking, looking down the road and understanding that as a community we need to make sure that the buildings and the facilities are kept up. So I was excited to see and I just wanted to make mention of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Marissa Green.
Hi, good evening. Marisa Green, 197 Cassandra Lane. And I have been here for a few meetings, and I simply wanted to come on behalf of North Hockey, former parents, current parents, and just say thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the Superintendents Report?
Sure. I would like to just highlight a couple of things with back to school in mind. First off, I want to thank our maintenance staff and GCA custodial staff for the great work that they have done getting the schools prepared. We've done a lot of, Dr. Humbert and I did a tour of every building today, in fact, and a little bit here and there over the last few weeks, and it's amazing how clean they are and how ready they are for our students, and by all counts today, our students had a very good day, even in this excessive heat. Kudos to Dr. Humbert and to Kim Ramos for a tremendous tech conference on last Friday. We had roughly 600 educators from North Kingstown and Jamestown, and by all counts, it was such a great day. A lot of our own staff teaching one another some really great ideas about how to infuse technology in their teaching and learning. So it was a great day. We had a lot of very, very positive feedback from the educators of both districts. I also want to point out that at our convocation last Friday, and I sent this out in a listserv today, that Leslie Buckley, who is a clerk at the high school, won the North Kingstown Educational Support Professional of the Year, and Mrs. Suzanne Lynch, the North Kingstown Teacher of the Year. Mrs. Lynch is a library media specialist at Stony Lane. We had a tremendous ceremony with all of our district staff here, and both gave very heartfelt speeches, and it was a really, really fine ceremony, and they are two very deserving people who've both done tremendous work for our district over many, many years. So congratulations to them. I think that is all I have for tonight.
Thank you. I can disclose that there were no executive session votes taken this evening. Can I have a motion to seal the executive session minutes of September 8th, 2015?
Motion to seal?
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. I have one comment to the consent agenda. There's a clarification under F1, approval of transfer. Gregory Southworth is going from a 6-hour one-on-one TA at DMS, and Francisca Morrill is going from a 6-hour TA at DMS. And there was a typo in the packet where it was listed as 6.5 hours, but they both should be 6 hours.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Could I ask that, if the committee has no objection, could we move correspondence up? I just had one particular piece I wanted to discuss very briefly.
Sure.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to move that up at this
Second.
point.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just wanted to mention, and I think, Dr. Roger, you got a copy of this, that there was a study done at Yale about artificial turf, and they've concluded that it is basically poisonous. So it's pretty amazing findings, and it's going to cause all kinds of issues. So I'm kind of glad that we haven't done this at this point. They're going to be ripping it up in a lot of stadiums because of that. I guess it was a pretty prestigious study done at Yale. Phil, did you take a look at that at all?
I have not. No,
Yeah.
I'm
So
not aware of that.
just as something to be, to mention, since I know that's something that we're thinking about in the district. We'll have to just wait and see what happens with the science in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Avanzato. Are there any exemptions to the consent agenda? Mrs. McGovern?
D2, E1, F2, and 3.
Are there any other exemptions? Mrs. Avanzato?
I make a motion to approve the non-exempted consent agenda items.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Mrs. McGovern, you approved D2, or you exempted D2, approval of bids and awards?
Yeah, I just wanted to express my concern that the contract requires a 20-day turnaround on all the payments, and ask if there is a penalty for not meeting that.
Yeah, there is a percentage in there. I believe it's 1%, but it shouldn't be a problem. We do 30 days now, and I've already discussed with my payables department. I mean, it kind of is what it is. Direct Energy is the incumbent, and this is the kind of the payment plan that they're moving toward.
Because sometimes, but from the date of the bill, by the time you get it, it could almost be a week later to begin with.
We do have to keep a good eye on it. You are very right about that. Right. But they are the incumbent. We have worked with them over the last 6 years, so I think if we're late a couple of days here and there, I don't really see a problem, but we will definitely keep an eye on it. We don't like to pay interest.
No. So I'll make a motion to approve D2.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Mrs. McGovern, E1.
I was wondering if Mary could just discuss how this came to be, and I thought it deserved more recognition than just approval on the consent agenda.
Actually, I think it was about 3 weeks ago now, on a Friday afternoon, I got a call from a principal at one of our schools saying that someone had come to him, that they wanted to donate this piano that came their way. And I contacted Norma Kayaza at the high school, and of course she was thrilled by it. It's a beautiful piano, worth, in Ms. Kayaza's opinion, approximately $9,000. She's very excited about it because we have the piano that they were able to purchase through some donated funds and school department funds at the end of last year. That can be used for all of the plays, and what they've been doing is they've been moving that kind of back and forth, which is not a good thing for pianos. Now they have this beautiful piano that they can use for practices and rehearsals. And I did not note the person's name in the letter because we didn't, I wasn't able to reach out to the person to find out if they wanted their name to be recognized. Dr. Auger will certainly send them a letter, and we are very happy about it. It just kind of came our way at the last minute, and certainly it was something that the high school music department was very excited about.
Well, it was very generous, and we are fortunate.
Thankful, too.
So, motion to approve.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Mrs. McGovern, F2.
One of those staff change increases says a 1.1. Could you explain how someone fills a 1.1?
Yes. In this case, it's an itinerant teacher of music, and the last district that I was in, this is something that we would do quite often, where you have an extra piece of the job available, the person would give up some of their planning time to, teach extra sections beyond, say if it were at the high school, you'd teach an extra class, whereas you're supposed to be teaching 5, you would teach 6. And it makes for a very, a lot of long days and a lot of extra planning. But it is sometimes, in this case, we feel it would be easier than trying to find someone who would come into the district to work just for a 0.1. We tried that kind of thing before, and it's very difficult. Once you get below, say, 0.3 or 0.4, it's really hard to find anyone who would come to take that little of a part-time job. So it works out well that this person is available at the time we would need them at that extra school, and we can make it work that way. So that's how it turned out to be 1.1.
Okay. So, motion to approve.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Mrs. McGovern, F3.
This academic resource coordinator, there wasn't a clarification as to whether this is a new position or a replacement, and if so, why?
This is a year-to-year stipended position to oversee the Academic Resource Center at the high school.
It's the same person?
It's the same person as last year, yes.
Okay. All right, then motion to approve.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Mrs. King, the 2014-15 school budget, would you like to discuss the approval of the fund balance categories?
Yes. Last year, we did a similar reserving of fund balance for what we had for FY14. I think one of the biggest things that I want to note in this is that the reserve here doesn't mean that it's absolutely going to be spent. We still need to come back to the school committee for any approvals. We still need to do, follow purchasing regulations. I also want to say that I still strongly believe that we need to hold on to a portion of the fund balance for emergencies. There's been discussion that, the 2% of the budget is arbitrary. Okay, whatever, let's stick with some sort of methodology. We've been doing the 2% over the last several years, and I think it's very, very, very important that we have some sort of a savings account, if you will, because items come up all the time, and we do not have a backstop for emergency items. So with that said, there is approximately $2 million, and the numbers are unaudited at this point, but we don't expect dramatic changes. Approximately $2 million in the fund balance, which would really technically say that if we're trying to hold on to $1.2 million, we really only have $800,000 play with going forward, and I don't mean play with, to reserve going forward. We have also been using the fund balance for only one-time items, so whether that be a one-time legal issue, a one-time legal settlement, or capital upgrades to our schools. So I think that you know that over the last 3+ years that I've been here, I have been on my soapbox every year when we're talking about our CIP, our Capital Improvement Program, that we absolutely, as a town, need to work together to come up with a long-term plan for capital upgrades to our schools. Our schools, like us, our schools do not get any younger. I have an estimate of anywhere from $15 to $20 million of items right now that we know need to be addressed, and every single day our buildings get older and the roofs get older and there are more issues with them. And as a town, if we don't figure out how we're going to fund that, if we're always trying to bond something, it's not, in my opinion, it is really not the answer. Dr. Auger has also talked about this for many years, and our committee member who is not here has talked about it since he's been on the committee as well, Bob Jones. So I think it's important that these funds are reserved for those one-time items, and we try to keep an eye on creating categories, and this is something that Bob Jones was big on as well, and I tend to agree with him, creating fund categories. So we know that we have an entire fleet of vehicles that we use for maintenance that are going to get old. We just purchased one for $74,000 at the last meeting. We need to start trying to put money, even if it's $5,000 a year, into these funds so that we can start building these reserves for the future. It's not necessarily going to help us with our current needs, but we need to start somewhere, and I think this is a really good start with that. And again, these are suggestions that Dr. Auger and I have for you. Certainly, if you want to see some changes in them, we can certainly do that. But again, we will have to come back to you for any approval on spending any of this money. So I don't want anybody to think that now, okay, it's just going to go to those items. 3 items that we are looking for possibly for next summer, because we have to do all of our schoolwork in the summer, are we know that we still have some issues with the that were unaddressed in this past summer with the heating and ventilation system here at the high school. I'm working with RIDE on their new school building authority. They're calling it kind of a grant opportunity. We submitted applications to see if possibly we could receive some of that money. So the way that school building authority fund works is it's in addition to housing aid. So you have your housing aid program that is basically bigger renovations, and you get paid back longer term. So in other words, if you bond something, you're getting housing aid based on a formula over X number of years for whatever your district percentage is, and ours is about 40%. The school building account, school building authority fund, either you can borrow the money, and what you're borrowing is, for us, if 40% is the state funding, school facilities funding, we would be borrowing 60% to be paid back over a period of time depending on the cost of the upgrade. Or we are only paying the 60% for the project. So in other words, RIDE in this school building authority fund is financing the 40% right up front. So you're not putting the money out in a bond and waiting over 5, 10, or 15 or years longer to get that money back. So it's kind of in addition. They're kind of trying to kickstart the school facilities plan again. The moratorium has somewhat been lifted. The fund only has $20 million in it, and it has some pretty strict timing guidelines, which are a little bit off from what we're used to. The application was due September 10th, and normally we're not really looking at, we have some idea of what we might want to do for capital upgrades, but we don't really plan that stuff out until maybe November, December, January, February. So I submitted an application on the remaining items in this building, which I think might have a pretty good chance. There are also several areas of floor covering that really, really, really need to be addressed. Fishing Cove Elementary School, Stony Lane Elementary School, the auditorium here in the high school, the admin area in the high school, and the D building. So while the admin area of the high school and the D building would not qualify for any school housing aid, it's possible that we could get something from this school building authority for those 2 items. But I think our chances on that are kind of slim. They're trying to keep this $20 million they're giving out to health and safety items and items of an emergency nature.
Thank you, Mrs. King. Mrs. Avanzato?
Are you looking for a motion, Mary?
I am.
I'm going to offer a motion. I'm going to offer a motion right now on the table, and we can discuss it from there. My motion is to approve the categories as stated in the agenda.
Second? Mrs. Avanzato?
Yeah, I just want to thank Mary and I want to recognize the financial management that we've been doing at the school department. We didn't have this. We really did not have this 15 years ago. Our buildings were just, we kept having problems, kept having issues, but we really didn't have a plan going forward. And I think it's critical that we do. We used to get $500,000 from the town for our capital reserve fund every year, and they had issued a resolution on the town side that they do so, that they fund us for these things. They have not done so at least, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years. So we're essentially funding ourselves. We're essentially funding the repair of our own buildings, which is pretty extraordinary, and I think I just want to tip my hat to the management that's been happening here in order to do that. It's not easy, and of course at times we will have to go out, get money from other sources, ask the town if it's something like HVAC, which is like, you know, millions and millions and millions of dollars. But just the way we've been utilizing the money has just been very responsible, and I just want to recognize that. Good job with the ride stuff. That came up very quickly. Probably some districts might even miss the deadline on that. So even if we get one thing approved, it'll be gravy. So that's great. And that's all. Thank you very much, Mary.
You're welcome. One thing, on the town $500,000, they made the resolution, but there was 1 year that we got a couple $100,000 on funding that. We've never received the $500,000. That's something that there was a resolution made, but it gets voted on every single year.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and I can't remember the exact year, but we never actually received $500,000.
Years ago we did, but that was
It
prior
may- yeah,
to this,
maybe it
prior
was-
to your time, prior to
Yeah.
this committee's time, and prior to the current town council's time.
Yeah, in like from like 2010, we haven't.
No, we have not. Yeah.
But, you know, we really can't lose sight of something. We have our long-term planning task force that Dr. Auger is heading up, where we're really trying to start those conversations on what we do in the future. So you have two things going. You have the current needs that we know buildings have, but then you have the future depreciation. And we really can't lose sight of how incredibly important that is, that we know we're not going to solve $20 million or $30 million in 1 year. We couldn't possibly get all the work done, but we can't lose sight of needing that plan, because, you know, buildings, they don't get any younger, and we're going to be in some critical shape. As I've always said, Wickford Middle School is 80-plus years old.
Well, the town needs to be a partner in this, is what you're saying.
do.
They absolutely need to be. And this is tied in with our long-term planning, too, like if we decide to build a new middle school at some point down the road.
Whatever,
But we're going to need town support.
We need to work together on that, we really do.
Any further discussion, Mr. Glasgow?
I just want to quickly mention something that Mrs. King said a little bit, and it comes up often, how important it is that these funds are allocated for one-time expenses, maintenance, things that aren't recurring every year. And for those who don't understand the importance of that, what happens otherwise is, you know, often I hear, well, why don't you take money out of the fund balance to hire that teacher or to fund that program or to do that sport? And the answer is that's a one-off fix. You've taken money that you will not have the following year to plug a hole, but when that next year runs around, now that money's gone. You don't have it anymore. And so responsible budgeting requires that if it's an annual expense, that it needs to be budgeted for annually. It needs to be in the operating budget so that that money is there every year, and you're not just cutting that program the following year when the money's not there. So the point behind this is to have a long-term plan to set these funds aside for the things that, well, I mean, they're expenses we know they're going to happen, but ones that are not recurring every year, so that we have the funds when they need to be used. Thank you.
So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Motion, oh, I'm sorry, Sheila.
No.
We're not- Okay. Motion passes 3-1. Mrs. King, do you have anything to report for the 2015-16 school budget?
No.
Anything to report for the CIP, existing bond, future bond?
No, just again, I want to remind you that at the next meeting or the meeting after, I will be bringing forward requesting a vote on turning over 100 Fairway Drive to the town. I know that everybody has heard that there seems to be some plans in the works for 100 Fairway Drive, and I would think that they would like to know that they're going to have site control before they finalize any of those plans. So I've been working with Phil Bergeron on this. Two concerns I have that I'm working with through him on. One is our Munis connection to our accounting package, which is attached to that building, and we are working through town IT on that. We're kind of we have to work with the town because the Munis package is on their server, so we're doing that. And the other issue is going to be parking, depending on what or who actually goes from the town into 100 Fairway. You know, I need to work with Mr. Bergeron. He's well aware of that, but there is a possibility that as the town people are in the front part of the lot, we get squeezed further down to the D building, which could cause some issues with some of our student parking. So I'm just going to warn everybody on that. We're going to do absolutely everything we can for that not to happen. But early on it might, because I believe it'll take quite a bit of reconfiguration and possibly even some site work. The parking is not set up the greatest. The other two issues that the SRO from the high school is going to work with Dr. Manseri and I on are the excessive speed of students out of that parking lot down toward the back of the D building, out of 100 Fairway. It was bad enough when school department employees were there, but if you're going to have citizens coming into the new town hall, the speed absolutely is out of control. The SRO said that he would work with us on that. And there was one other issue. I think it was just the speed then. It must have been just one. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that again, that I'll be bringing that forward next meeting or the meeting after. We have some stuff in there that needs to be cleaned out. Our maintenance staff has really been busy with getting schools going, but next week they're going to continue working on whatever else needs to be cleaned out of the building.
Thank you, Mrs. King. Mrs. Avanzato?
Briefly, I could be wrong, but I don't think there's been any conclusion that they're definitely moving into 100 Fairway. Am I wrong?
I don't think so either. I know there's been an awful lot of ruckus about it, but I would think that they would like to know, you know, site control is usually the number one tenet of making any determination. So I would think that they would want to know that they have site control before they make any final plans.
You're on top of it. It may never happen, but thank you for the work you put into that.
Can I have a motion to approve the DMS and WMS accessibility policy? This is a second read.
So moved.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. We have already discussed correspondence. Is there any further discussion with regards to any reports?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?
Afraid to say it.
Aye.
Aye. I know last time I was premature with the motion to
Afraid someone would say no, and that would, we'd have to.
Wait, one more thing. No, please, don't. We already adjourned, sorry.
It's kind of surreal, isn't it?
Really?